Happy New Year, Bela, and it is Sunday. I loved your video on Sam Butler. I liked how he applied the coming of age trope to religious thought, and so I thought that I would make today's video all about choice being taken away from young people by indoctrination. So I wanted to talk about the yeshiva that we both went to, because I think it compares so well to Sam Butler's experience. I mean, Sam Butler was never really dedicated to Christ. He was never passionate about serving the church. He simply allowed the inertia of his life to continue carrying him onto this path that his parents and his religious community had set for him, right? The fact that a single speech by someone who had debate skills convinced this guy to dedicate his life to Christ means that he had never really thought through his life for himself. Because usually people don't make major life decisions in one speech, right? Because he was never really trained or able or even really allowed to make his own decision, he kind of just kept along the path that was continuously reinforced for him over and over and over again. Once Butler matures, you see him make his own choice, which is to leave the church. And in my opinion, that's the first real decision he's ever made in his life, because every other choice he's had was really just a decision that's been reinforced by the adults around him his entire life. It's not his decision. That kind of brings us back to our old yeshiva. You know, I was talking to Mom the other day, actually, about how much of a choice is really given to the kids who are raised in our community and who attend that yeshiva. And the conclusion that I came to after our conversation was just that these kids are not really given any choice at all. I mean, I'm a substitute teacher at their school. They're raised to believe what they believe. They don't really have a chance to believe anything else. And if they do, then that's beaten out of them real quick. The point that I'm trying to make is that kids with undeveloped brains are so very malleable, so very influenceable. And to tell a kid that Santa is real when he's 4 years old is to make a kid believe that Santa is real. It's not to offer him the choice between believing Santa's real or not, right? Because he doesn't have the faculties to tell you that you're wrong. I think that everything being so new and overwhelming for kids is why they wind up filling our elementary school with all these kids who use slurs about homosexuals, all these fans of Andrew Tate, all these people who don't respect women. It's absolutely crazy. It's there's so much exclusion within our community, and a lot of this exclusion is just beaten into these kids when they're young, and they're too young to realize that actually there is nothing different or weird about these people that they're excluding. Because when kids are taught at a young age to hate gay people like we were, then they're never really given a chance to love and accept everyone for who they are. The battle lines have been drawn for them before they even get a chance to understand why there's a war in the first place. And I'm constantly forced to re-examine my own biases as I get older. My background had me hating on groups like the LGBT community and women who wanted to be included in secular life, or just wanted to express their sexuality in a different way than maybe necessarily me or the people who grew up like me want to express ours. I don't really think I even questioned whether a nearly 4,000-year-old book's account of how those different than you and me should be treated until I was 13 years old. Which kind of brings me to why I got the idea to do this video and this topic in the first place, which is that I just recently went to a small class reunion with an old rabbi and a bunch of friends who were in the class with me. And we met up, we broke bread, we reminisced about old times, but there was something that really stuck with me, and that was what he said when the conversation turned to Yeshiva University and what's going on there. You see, the thing is that my old rabbi was very upset about how the US government was preventing Yeshiva University from closing down the LGBT clubs on their campus. So a bunch of students who were LGBT wanted to open their own club, right? They wanted to have a safe space to talk about their life and their struggles and all, the things that they're going through. And Yeshiva University tried to shut it down, and they tried to make them meet off campus. But they take grant money from the US government, and if you're going to take grant money from the US government, then you can't discriminate against taxpayers, which includes gay people. And, this rabbi of mine, he did all the classic rabbi moves. He brought up the abomination line in the Bible, all the classics. But his main concern is what I found super interesting, which is that he claimed that the modern part of modern Orthodoxy, the strain of Judaism which we were raised with, is taking over, that the modern is beating the Orthodoxy. And that religious Jews, especially young children who have not yet completed the indoctrination process, should not be exposed to the secular world. That's his argument, really. And to me, there's no greater hypocrisy on this planet than the hyper-religious crowd advocating against the free marketplace of ideas. Literally, because you ask them not to use hate speech when referring to groups of people who violate their religious perspectives, and they'll tell you they have the right to free speech. But then you ask them to expose their kids to the entire set of ideas and not just the small subset that they've cut out of all intellectual discussion, and they just lose their minds. And it's just you're not really believe in God if you've never been shown anything else. You're just on default mode, okay? Just like if you've never been told of God, you don't not believe in God, you just don't know he exists. It's just default mode, okay? You don't really choose for yourself if you're a kid and this is being beaten into you like night and day. Say what I say when I say it, now say it again. You know, it's like the kids can't resist this kind of thing. I think that like my rabbi understands this, which is why he wants to exclude secular culture and even like the knowledge that secular culture exists from these kids' minds. I don't think he's for internet access for these kids. I don't think he's for talking to people outside of the religious community. And I just think that when you really consider why these rabbis in our community are so against people talking to people different than them, I think it's because, at least partially, they know that when we talk to them, we're going to realize that they're pretty much exactly the same as you and me, except for a few cool quirks which don't really affect us anyway. And we're going to stop giving a shit about hating them, because guess what? If you, as the Bible says, lie with a man in the way that a man should lie with a woman, then you're not hurting anyone. Anyway, you can tell nothing scares our old community as much as the thought of the free spread of information. Oh, anything but that. And I think that they understand subconsciously that they're going to lose in the marketplace of ideas because their ideas are somewhat garbage. When you use religion and God, when you say that God is loving and then you used him as an excuse, when you use God as an excuse, a loving God as an excuse to exclude people, to not go to the weddings of the people inside of your own family, which is literally pushed at our school. The rabbis tell you that you should not attend the wedding of gay family members. And it's just like, that is not a loving God. That is a hateful God. And anyone with 2 brain cells with enough exposure to secular culture and other points of view will reach this conclusion on their own, which is why the orthodoxy part of modern orthodoxy is so intent on pushing the modern part out. It's also why modern orthodoxy is tending towards the modern part, because when kids have access to other sorts of ideas, they will change their minds. They will learn that people are not worth excluding, that people are generally very cool regardless of their race, sexuality, or gender. Last bit of indoctrination that I feel we both experienced on a very harsh level and that I wanted to bring up so that I can criticize it is the anti-individualist nature of religious communities like the one we grew up in. And I think that it's anti-individualist because it has this idea, and it's more obvious in Christianity because they have Jesus, but it's very much there in Judaism as well. This idea that there is only one way to be. There's a one-size-fits-all for morality. That's not true. People are in different circumstances. They have different cultures. They're like, some things are universal, right? Don't murder innocent children. But when you say keep the Sabbath and then say, oh yeah, every Jew should do that, it's like, no, some Jews want to be doctors. Some Jews want to not sacrifice a seventh of their life to religious cultism. Like, you can't say that you're not a good Jew, you're not a good person if you're not keeping the Sabbath. You don't have the right to tell someone that they're not worth, that their value as a human is invalidated just because they don't act and behave and believe the exact same things you do. And yet Jewish philosophy, especially I shouldn't say all of Jewish philosophy. I should say Jewish philosophy in the particular yeshiva in which we were raised is trying to convince people that these people should be excluded. Of course, any ideology or philosophy that is based on the concept of exclusion will eventually fail as their kids go out into the world and learn that these people who are being excluded are actually just like them, and that they shouldn't be excluded because, hey, they're kind of cool, you know? And I think that once you realize that, it's very difficult to stay the same level of religious that is expected within our community. And I think that that's why our community is so terrified of kids being exposed to other ideas, because they know that their ideas suck, that they'll lose. It's this sort of cognitive dissonance felt by certain rabbis, like the one I was just describing, where it's like, this idea, if compared to other ideas and given to non-biased participants, those non-biased participants will not choose the ideas that I want. I only chose those ideas because I was indoctrinated as a child, but I don't realize it because of the indoctrination itself, and therefore I'm going to do whatever I can to push my ideology on other people, even when those people actively choose the other choice. And I think that the conclusion that you can take away from this is that hyper-religious communities are not based on the fundamental of choice, that most of these people never chose in their lives. That they can't choose because the simple fact is that before kids are 25, their brains are developing. They will not make, and I know I'm saying this as a 20-year-old, so there's a bit of irony there, and fair enough, but I'm just saying that before the age of 25, you're not really smart enough to make choices that will affect the rest of your life. And it's one thing to say, oh, you can get a tattoo. At the end of the day, it'll just be an embarrassing, like, I don't know, Japanese word that, like, stands for potato or toilet, like, on some random girl's arm. Like, not the end of the world. But if you're choosing a religious ideology before you're old enough to properly choose, to properly know that there is a choice, then you're picking something that's way more influential in your life than a tattoo. You're picking something that, at least in Judaism, will take a seventh of your life and restrict you from traveling during it. Like, and that's just one form of exclusion. I mean, you're also not going to be able to talk to a lot of groups of people. Like, especially the more religious you get, you can't even talk to women. Like, if you want to live the kind of life where you are just excluded and like a hermit to the world, where you don't talk to the other people, where you don't become a well-traveled, well-versed person, then you're not going to live a full and satisfied life because you're going to be restricted. That's just how it works. I also think it's worth noting that a lot of the people in our community, in our old community, are Baal Teshuvim. What that means is that they were not religious growing up, and then they became religious once they were older, after exploring the world, going on their own religious and spiritual journey, and coming to the conclusion that this was the lifestyle for them, and that's a beautiful thing. But then they turn around and they don't want their kids to get the same choice. If you got to explore the world, discover all the ideologies, learn from different cultures, and then choose, by the way, like the Rambam did, our famous rabbi, and then choose that lifestyle, then why would you not give your kids the same opportunity? I want to say, without coughing this time, that I do love and respect and appreciate the community that raised me and that gave me the opportunities that I have. I think we have the best educational culture in the entire world by far. But I just don't think that the good in our community means that we can ignore the bad that's going on. I think we need to improve ourselves. We need to be more inclusive. But I just don't see that happening anytime soon, unless the modern part of modern Orthodoxy takes over, which of course will drive the Orthodox part of modern Orthodoxy away, which is unfortunate. I'll end on a note of hope and saying that the fact that all of these kids are getting access to the internet, and they are, whether their parents want it to be so or not, they are getting access to different points of view and different arguments, that you can see assimilation rates are rising, that people are intermarrying, that people are vibing with other cultures. Like, these are good signs. And so I will end on a message of hope. I think that the world is becoming a more accepting and inclusive place, and it cannot happen fast enough. Bela, I will see you on Sunday.